This story plays out like a tragic opera, its final act leaving an ache that never truly fades. It's a saga of passion and treachery, of dizzying triumphs and soul-crushing defeats. And at its heart stands Maria Callas, the iconic diva whose voice was so electrifying, so utterly hypnotic, it was declared one of the most magnificent of all time. She was the embodiment of artistic brilliance, yet beneath the spotlight hid a woman tormented by her genius, her stardom, and most of all, by love. Then came Aristotle Onassis, a shadowy tycoon who personified extravagance, influence, and boundless riches. His name dripped from the lips of high society, and his legendary yacht, Christina, was a floating palace of excess. A man who could command anyone's attention, yet he fixated on Maria. The globe became entranced as their scandalous love affair erupted, a fiery, nearly 20-year entanglement marked by reckless desire, bitter disillusionment, and agonizing compromises. To Maria, this romance with the world's wealthiest man seemed like destiny fulfilled, a fantasy that might finally soothe the loneliness she carried. But that dream soon became her ruin, stealing her voice, her standing, and in the end, her sanity. What began as a feverish obsession twisted into sorrow and desolation, plunging her into a spiral of anguish and remorse. She clung to their love, to the life they'd planned, only to see it obliterated in the cruelest way imaginable. Don't miss the full video. Smash that like button, subscribe, and let's dive in. Maria Callas' story begins not on stage, but in a cramped New York apartment where Greek immigrant parents struggled to make ends meet. The year was 1923. America was roaring, but the Callas family was barely surviving. Yet in these humble surroundings, something miraculous happened. Before she could even read music, little Maria was reproducing complex operatic passages after hearing them just once on the radio. Her voice wasn't just good, it was supernatural. Her mother Litsa saw dollar signs where others saw a child's hobby. With ruthless determination, she funneled every spare cent into voice lessons, transforming their tenement into a makeshift conservatory. While other kids played outside, Maria was drilling scales, her mother's critical ear never far away. This wasn't childhood, it was boot camp for future greatness. By age 11, professionals were whispering about the little Greek girl with the voice of an angel. Then came 1937, the year everything changed. As storm clouds gathered over Europe, the Callas family made a desperate retreat to Greece. For 14-year-old Maria, it felt like exile. But Litsa smelled opportunity. Back home, elite training would cost pennies. She enrolled Maria with famed diva Elvira de Hidalgo, who took one listen and nearly fainted. This child, she declared, has the instrument of a goddess. What followed was less education than vocal alchemy. Maria's teenage years became a blur of 10-hour practice sessions, brutal criticism, and crushing expectations. While her peers flirted at cafes, she was dissecting Bellini arias. The pressure was inhuman, but so were the results. By 16, she could outsing conservatory graduates twice her age. That's when the whispers started. The Greeks have found their new Pallas Athena, and she sings. The making of a legend had begun. That scared, homesick immigrant girl was disappearing, replaced by something extraordinary, the first glimmers of the Callas the world would worship. But at what cost? The child prodigy was becoming a machine, her humanity slowly sacrificed to the god of perfection. Little did she know, this was only the overture. The real drama was yet to come. The year was 1947 when lightning struck Verona's ancient arena, not from the skies, but from the stage, where a 24-year-old Maria Callas first channeled Joan of Arc's fiery spirit. That performance didn't just impress audiences, it rewrote opera history overnight. Suddenly, every major house from Milan to Manhattan demanded this Greek-American phenomenon. Through sheer volcanic talent and relentless perfectionism, she'd rehearse until her feet bled. Maria ascended to twin thrones, La Scala's unchallenged queen and the Met's brightest jewel. This was no ordinary diva. Callas swept into theaters like an empress holding court, her standards so impossibly high she'd reject tenors mid-rehearsal if their vibrato wavered. Mediocrity smells worse than cheap perfume, she'd famously sneer. turning duets into solo performances rather than share the stage with musical peasants. Her dressing room became a fortress where only the elite, Visconti, Di Stefano, Serafin, gained entry. Yet behind the regal facade pulsed unexpected vulnerabilities. Like a Renaissance monarch dependent on court flattery, Maria craved constant reassurance about her supremacy, not just as an artist, but as a woman. "Tell me again how my Tosca moved you to tears." She'd implore visitors after performances, her dark eyes hungry for validation. This insatiable need stemmed from twin demons, childhood memories of pawned furniture and empty iceboxes that left her perpetually terrified of returning to obscurity's cold embrace. The greater her fame grew, the tighter she clung to it, not for art's sake, but survival's. The weight of Maria Callas's meteoric career fell squarely on the broad shoulders of Giovanni Battista Meneghini, a silver-haired Italian industrialist whose passion for opera matched his business acumen. This unlikely savior entered Maria's life as both manager and mentor, eventually becoming her husband in 1949 when she needed stability most. Though decades her senior and standing nearly a head shorter, Meneghini possessed something priceless: an encyclopedic knowledge of music and the financial means to propel her to stardom. Their relationship defied conventional romance. Maria would later confess she cherished Giovanni with the tender devotion of a daughter. He was her anchor in turbulent seas, the father figure she'd never had. In return, Meneghini worshipped his temperamental star with monastic dedication. He became her human shield against the opera world's vipers, ruthlessly filtering out social climbers and time-wasters. While other divas wasted evenings at glittering parties, Maria was kept under what some called productive house arrest, her husband's protective strategy to maximize rehearsal time and vocal rest. Behind the scenes, theirs was a peculiar marriage of convenience and genuine affection. Meneghini's briefcase bulged with contracts rather than love letters, his devotion expressed through meticulously scheduled tours and shrewd negotiations. He understood what Maria needed most wasn't roses, but someone to handle everything except the singing. For nearly a decade, this arrangement worked brilliantly until a certain Greek shipping tycoon would test their unusual bond. The late 1950s saw Maria's star beginning to dim, though she remained consumed by her art, every waking moment devoted to perfecting each note, each gesture. Then came the fateful autumn evening in 1957 when her world tilted on its axis. At a Venetian ball thrown in her honor, a compact, barrel-chested tycoon cut through the crowd like a shark through calm waters. Aristotle Onassis took Maria's hand, his lips brushing her knuckles as he murmured in their native Greek, "You're not mortal, Kyria, you're Aphrodite herself, stepped down from Olympus to shame us mere humans." From that night forward, Onassis became Maria's persistent shadow. Wherever she toured, Milan, Paris, New York, his private yacht would mysteriously appear in the harbor. Backstage at La Scala, armfuls of blood-red roses would arrive with notes reading simply, "For the only true goddess." Restaurant maîtres would present single perfect blooms with her aperitif, whispering from Mr. O. Even her dressing tables became gardens, fresh flowers appearing daily like some magic trick, their heady perfume mingling with stage makeup. This relentless courtship struck deeper than mere flirtation. For Maria, who'd spent years in Meneghini's practical, businesslike care, Onassis' extravagant attention was like sunlight after decades in twilight. The billionaire understood something fundamental. The legendary Callas still craved validation that she was more than just a magnificent voice. She wanted to be desired as a woman, and Onassis, the consummate hunter, knew exactly how to weaponize that hunger. Behind the glittering facade of Onassis' world lay a marriage of cold convenience. In 1946, the 40-year-old shipping magnate had strategically wed 17-year-old Athena Livanos, not for love, but to merge two rival maritime dynasties. Their union produced first a prized son, Alexander, then an unwanted daughter, Christina, whom Aristotle dismissed with a businessman's pragmatism. Why polish silver when you already have gold? The couple moved through separate orbits, he with his mistresses and deals, she with her society circles, their marriage sustained only by mutual financial interests. That is, until 1957, when the tempestuous Maria Callas crashed into Onassis' carefully compartmentalized existence like a row wave. Suddenly, the calculating tycoon who viewed relationships as transactions found himself behaving like a smitten schoolboy. The man who scheduled his life in 15-minute increments now wasted entire days waiting outside opera houses. The billionaire who bought islands on whims began collecting something far more dangerous: moments with Maria. For the first time, Onassis' legendary control slipped. His usual dalliances with starlets had been casual diversions, but with Callas, he found his equal in passion, temperament, and sheer force of personality. The hunter had finally met his match, and neither their existing marriages nor the inevitable scandal would stop what came next. In the summer of 1959, Onassis invited Maria Callas and her husband on a cruise on his yacht, Christina, in the Mediterranean Sea. Maria initially wanted to decline, citing work commitments, but eventually gave in. However, Giovanni flatly refused to join. On board Onassis' $3 million floating palace, the most famous American, British, and Greek celebrities enjoyed their leisure. During the cruise, Maria met Winston Churchill and his wife. The Christina became a symbol of luxury. For Maria, the 3 weeks of traveling the Mediterranean felt like heavenly adventures. Most importantly, the singer was captivated by Onassis. During the journey, they behaved as if they had forgotten they had families. Everything unfolded in front of Onassis' official wife. For the first time in her life, Maria felt infinitely happy. Aristotle was noble towards her and adored her as much as she had always dreamed. Giovanni Menechini stood stunned. The devoted husband who had built Maria's career could have tolerated a fleeting affair, but what he saw was something far more dangerous. This wasn't some backstage fling. Maria burned with an all-consuming passion he'd never witnessed before. "This isn't you," he pleaded, but the woman who once lived only for music now barely glanced at her scores. The opera houses that had been her temples were suddenly just waiting rooms until she could see him again. Meanwhile, Athena Onassis' fury was volcanic. The long-suffering shipping heiress had turned a blind eye to her husband's countless indiscretions, but not this. Not the very public spectacle of Aristotle parading Maria through Monte Carlo like a trophy. Not the humiliating headlines. Their divorce papers were signed with the same cold efficiency that had once merged their family empires. Rumor had it the settlement cost Onassis dearly, though no amount of money could repair the greater damage to his reputation. For Maria, none of it mattered. The sacrifices, the scandals, she'd have burned down La Scala itself if Onassis asked. For the first time in her life, the legendary diva wasn't performing love, she was finally living it. Callas, lost in love, abandoned her career, ignoring contracts, fame, and her own genius. It was a fatal miscalculation. She trusted a man who lived for pleasure, not promises. As they awaited divorces, flitting between Monaco and Athens, Maria defiantly told reporters, "I love him like a girl, not for money. I could buy my own yacht. He saw me as a woman, not a machine." But her dream would crumble. The diva who commanded stages couldn't command his heart. Onassis had no intention of marrying Maria. His passion cooled, though gifts still arrived, empty tokens of a fading love. Maria dreamed of a grand wedding, but her lover grew cold, then cruel. Left alone in echoing mansions, she watched as he reconnected with his children and other women. Weeks of silence would break only when he returned with jewels and hollow promises, reigniting her hope each time. His ultimate betrayal. A French castle he vowed to buy for them, then forgot. Another man owned it by the time Maria asked. The diva who once commanded stages now waited on a man who treated love as a game. The world watched in disbelief as Maria, once the fiercest diva, became blind to Onassis' growing indifference. Friends whispered, how could a woman of such brilliance not see the truth? Her deepest wish, to have his child, turned to ashes. When she finally conceived, Onassis reacted with icy disgust. He walked out, leaving her alone with her joy, and soon her grief. The premature baby, Omero, lived just 2 hours. Maria buried him in a Milan cemetery, returning every year to kneel at the tiny grave, a ritual of mourning that outlasted her career. The loss broke her. Stress ravaged her legendary voice, During a 1965 Paris performance, the notes failed her mid-aria. The audience gasped. The unthinkable had happened. Callas the virtuoso fell silent on stage forever. Only solo concerts remained, shadows of her former glory. The woman who once ruled opera now wandered empty mansions, clinging to roses sent by a man who'd long since moved on. Maria stood at a crossroads, trapped between the agony of leaving Onassis and the torment of staying. At 43, hollowed by loss, she accepted his consolation prize. A Paris apartment, its opulence mocking her emptiness. Then came 1968's cruel twist. Headlines blared Onassis' engagement to Jackie Kennedy. The ultimate trophy, the widowed First Lady of America. Of course, Maria thought bitterly. Aristotle always collected icons, why not the most famous woman in the world? The irony scalded her. 8 years wasted waiting for his divorce, only to watch him wed another. At first, he gaslit her. It's just PR, my love, you're the only one. But the lie collapsed with their wedding photos. Maria shattered. Barricaded in her gilded cage, she drowned in pills and delusions. Maybe Jackie's extravagance would drive him back. But Onassis never returned. The man who promised castles left her with ghosts and a pharmacy's worth of regrets. Greeks whisper that the Onassis fortune carries a dark curse, a vortex of misery swallowing everyone it touches. The evidence is chilling. Just years after marrying Jackie, Aristotle's golden hair, 25-year-old Alexander, perished in a horrific plane crash, with Jackie herself allegedly urging him to pilot the doomed aircraft. The billionaire faced an unthinkable choice, pulling the plug on his son's life support. The dominoes kept falling. Athena, his scorned first wife, died of an overdose 18 months later. A broken Onassis followed soon after, his heart giving out at 69. Christina, his sole surviving child, inherited billions, only to die young at 37, her 4 failed marriages and the family's unraveling. Even Jackie escaped the curse, but at what cost? Her reputation lay in tatters after the marriage, her name forever tied to a dynasty drenched in sorrow. The moral: some fortunes don't glitter, they burn. In March 1975, Onassis' health deteriorated badly. Maria could not stay with him because his official wife was with him. But when Jackie was not around, Artemis, Onassis' sister, informed Maria that she could come. Thus occurred their farewell. Aristotle had been unconscious for 5 weeks. The Greek woman, looking at the love of her life connected to every possible device, whispered that she would never leave him and would love him forever. Onassis was laid to rest beside his son Alexander on Scorpios, the private island where he once hosted kings. His legendary yacht Christina O, once the floating palace of Europe's elite, slowly decayed in port, its gilded salons silent. A fitting metaphor. The empire survived, but the soul had rotted away. Maria's final act was one of slow unraveling. The woman who once held audiences spellbound now paced her Paris apartment, a ghost haunting her own life. Sedatives and sorrow became her only companions. On September 16, 1977, the world learned the voice of the century had died alone at 53. The official cause: heart attack. The truth: a heart broken too many times. In death, she kept her promise. As instructed, her ashes were cast over the waves of Scorpios, eternally circling Aristotle's grave. The diva who commanded stages now existed only as sea foam and whispers, finally bound to the man who'd loved her almost enough.